Hi, I'm Gareth Green, and in this video we're going to have a look at the opening bars of a very famous piano piece by Brahms. It's his second Rhapsody in the key of G minor, his Opus 79, number 2, written in the year 1879. So entitled Rhapsody, molto appassionato, ma non troppo allegro. So what's very passionate about this piece that shows off the kind of romantic stature of Brahms? Well, let's have a little look and see what we can discover about this piece. But first of all, let's have a flavour of the music, and it goes something like this. And so on. Anyway, a couple of wrong notes there, sorry about that. I haven't played this piece properly for many years, and in fact I'll let you into a secret. I entered a piano competition when I was 17, it's just a few years ago now, and I played this from memory and had one of those ghastly experiences where I got halfway through the piece, all was going well, and had a complete blank about what came next. Couldn't remember for the life of me what happened next. So made up a couple of bars that sounded a little bit Brahmsian, and then got back into the piece, then realised I was rerunning something that I'd already played. Got to the same point, and of course you know how it goes. Another mental block, bust another bar or two, got back in again, back on some loop from earlier in the piece. Anyway, it was a complete jumble, and I sat down at the end of the performance back in the audience chair, just feeling completely fed up with myself because I knew I could play this piece and the whole thing had just gone horribly wrong. Anyway, there was a lovely old lady adjudicating this, and she stood up at the end and went through each of the performances. And so I was just waiting for the inevitable. And she said some very nice things about the way I played the piece, but failed to mention the fact that I'd never got to the end of it and had missed out half the piece and made up most of the other half of the piece, which is a bit curious. And then when it came to announcing the results, she announced that I was the winner. Well, I went to receive this trophy and a cash prize, and honestly, absolutely did not deserve it at all. But for some reason, she didn't seem to have noticed that the whole thing had gone wrong. Anyway, there we are. And I was given some money as the prize to further my music education. And I just got my first ancient car. So in order to further my musical education, I bought a radio to put in the car. Anyway, that's my story of my encounter with the Opus 79 number 2 Rhapsody of Brahms. There are many more interesting things to know about the piece than that. Let's have a look and see what some of them are. Well, first of all, this is a piece of music in the key of G minor, isn't it? So let's see how it begins. Well, it starts with this D, and then we have a D and an A. So you think, okay, well, D is the dominant of G minor, so that all makes perfect sense. And even though we're having a dominant chord with no third in it, we're sort of hearing a dominant chord, and then we just know what's going to happen. We're going to get a tonic chord of G minor. The bass even goes D, G, so there's no doubt that that's going to happen. Except that it doesn't, because what actually happens is you get this dominant chord with no third in it, and then we have this E flat major chord, which is a fascinating move, isn't it? Because it's actually chord 6, and it's chord 6 in its first inversion. So we start with chord 5, anacrusis start, and quite often when you have an anacrusis, you have a dominant chord on this upbeat, and then you have the tonic on the first beat of the next bar. So Brahms has purposely used an anacrusis, not starting on the first beat of the bar, and then he's purposely put the wrong chord in, if you like, just to make the initial drama really telling. So you're thinking, what on earth is this? And then he spells out the rest of that chord. You know, you've got the whole triad there. So then you think, well, what's he going to do now? I mean, what an unusual start. So surely he's now going to go and come back to G minor and just do the job properly, for goodness sake. Well, no, he doesn't. He goes to this chord 6 in first inversion and then does something you're really not expecting. In other words, he's taken that first fragment of 4 notes in the melody and used them in sequence. So we've gone a tone higher. So now what are we doing? We're going 5, 7. So this chord here is the dominant 7th in the key of F. And then he goes on to an F major chord in its first inversion. So we're now in a completely different key, aren't we? We're only in the second bar, the second measure of this piece. And now we're in F major for a rhapsody that's supposed to be in G minor. And have we really established the key of G minor? It hasn't happened, has it? And notice as well, quite a small fragment, melodically, just these 4 notes, then used in sequence. And then those 4 notes are extended to complete the second half of the phrase. So it's a beautiful melodic line, very memorable, singable line. But where we're going with the key, well, I don't know. We get to this point after that excursion into F major. We have an F major chord in first inversion, and then we go to the dominant of F major. So this is going on for 3 beats of that bar. Then we have this. Well, this chord at the end of that line there, that's a diminished 7th chord, isn't it? And when we put that diminished 7th chord into its root position, we get F sharp, A, C, E flat. So it's really a diminished 7th chord in the key of G. Well, good news, folks, because this is a rhapsody in G minor, isn't it? So if we're having a diminished 7th chord in G minor, well, that's great because we can go from there to G minor. And at least the first big cadence will be in the home key of G minor. Does Brahms do that? Diminished 7th in the key of G, but then he goes G major. So it feels like a T.S. to Picardy almost, doesn't it? A kind of, oh, G major. But why we're in the key of G major when we get here is anybody's guess. Okay, well, Brahms has obviously kind of freaked out, had some kind of introductory statement going through some keys that don't belong to the home key, but he's now in G major and all he needs to do is to go 5, 1, and he'll be in G minor. So probably that's what he's going to do next. Well, shall we see what he does next? Well, he starts off with this, which is intriguing because you're thinking it might be F sharp with the dominant 7th in G, but actually it's F sharp, and it's another one of these chords, just like the opening chord. It's a transposition of that anacrusic opening. And so this feels like it's a chord 5 in the key of B. Whether it's B major or B minor, who knows? But the next thing is that we get G major. So if we're in the key of B minor, if this is really the dominant chord of B minor, then of course this is chord 6 in B minor, isn't it? 6 in first inversion. So it's doing exactly what he did back at the beginning, and we're kind of using it in sequence, and then of course he does it again. So what are we doing then? So we've got B minor onto this 6, and then he's using it sequentially, dominant 7th in A major, first inversion. Okay, then what are we doing? A major chord, so that's 1 in first inversion in A, going to its dominant, chord 5. So that's what's happening down here. We've got a chord 5 in A major. And then we're getting a diminished 7th again. Well, we've been around this before, haven't we, really? We had that diminished 7th up there. Now we've got one here. Now this diminished 7th is really in the key of B, because the next chord is B major. So you think, okay, well, now we've come to our second major cadence, and see how Brahms is really kind of emphatic with separating out these cadences by having these writs here. So we really kind of know we've come to the end of the first statement here. We know we've come to the end of the second statement there. He further emphasizes this by putting a pause in there. And all the way through this kind of incredible harmonic journey that we've been on, and key journey, notice how the texture works. You've got this melody singing away at the top. You've got this bass, which is pretty low, got some big leaps in it as well. Octaves in the bass, really exploring the bottom of the piano. And then you've got this busy thing going on in the middle with the triplets, even with a bit of syncopation in it. So that's all quite exciting stuff. Then he just decides he's going to pause here before we go on to the next thing. So we're now in B major, thinking, well, I don't know what happened to G minor. But now we stopped. Well, maybe he's going to put it all right now and go to G minor. But what actually happens when he starts on this new idea here? He goes 5, another anacrusic start, so it feels like a dominant to the tonic. Oh, what's this key? E minor. So 5 to 1 in E minor, which is what's happening there. Then he decides to go 5 to 1 in G major. Well, you know, you hear that chord 5 in first inversion, you think, oh great, it's going to be G minor now, so he's finally going to get to G minor. Well, he goes E minor, and then he says, well, G major is the relative major of E minor, so let's have 5 in first inversion in G. Then he goes to G major, chord 1, chord 5, 1, 5, 1. So kind of the clearest bit of harmonic design so far, all the way through here. We're just doing 1s and 5s. But then, just when you think, well, if we're in G major, we might then have a C major chord, he says, well, let's have a C minor chord. Ooh. Well, C minor chord is chord 4 in G minor. G minor! We've been waiting for this piece, this rhapsody in G minor, to establish G minor. It's now going to happen. Oh, fantastic. Chord 4, chord 5. Oh, it's looking even more promising now because there's 5 in G minor. And you're going to be delighted when you hear the next chord because it's 1 in G minor. We're there, finally. All these bars into it. 5, 1, 5, 1. Terrific. So now we know we're in G minor, and he's going to have a big cadence in G minor, and we're going to be home in G minor. Does he do that? Then he comes into this bar where you suddenly think, oh, it's interesting, a D major chord in second inversion. Why are we doing that? And then he does this. It's a diminished 7th chord again. We've met them before. But slightly strange because it's a diminished 7th really in the key of A. Well, the next chord is a chord of A major. So whatever happened to that cadence in G minor that seemed inevitable after all that 1-5-1-5 in G minor, well, suddenly we're now sitting there on a chord of A major. Are we in the key of A major? Is A major something else? Well, you know, it could be the dominant of D, D major or D minor. And the next bit kind of feels a bit D minor-ish. But even that's a bit mysterious because if it is D minor, well, G sharp, the tritone above D, what's that doing there? It really adds to the drama of it, doesn't it? And so the piece unfolds, and we could talk about this piece all day because it's fascinating stuff. And later on, it's got all sorts of kind of dark mezzo voce contrast and so on. But isn't that an amazing thing, really, what Brahms is doing? In the way that he's got the texture structured with this lovely melody floating on the top that's kind of instantly kind of memorable. Bass really exploring the depth of the piano, middle of the texture, generally speaking, being quite busy. Some changes in the texture, you know, when we get to this section here, things kind of change a bit, don't they? You've got these staccato chords, slightly different and so on. But where he's going in terms of key and his use of harmony is absolutely remarkable and really dramatic. So you begin to see why this is a rhapsody and why it's marked molto appassionato. So if this is a piece you know, well, it's, I'm sure, great to re-engage with it again and maybe just to think through some of the detail of how does Brahms achieve what he's set out to do in this piece. And if it's a piece you don't know, it's definitely worth engaging with. And I hope this at least inspires you to listen to the rest of that G minor Rhapsody, the Opus 79, number 2. Well, if you've enjoyed this video, you might like to go to our website, www.mmcourses.co.uk. And when you get there, you'll see several tabs on the homepage. One of them is Maestros. Have a look on there. There are 3 levels of Maestros. They're nothing to do with ability levels at all. They're more like kind of levels of engagement, if you like. And level 1 brings some exciting little perks like emojis and other fun things. And it's really a support level. It's really for people who value what we're putting out on the channel and want to help us to continue with that work, because as you can imagine, it's a big commitment of time and expense and so on, just to put out these videos every single week. So it's a kind of support level and a way of just connecting a little more closely with us if you feel that's something you would like to do. If you want to get involved a little further, well, our level 2 group, nothing to do with ability at all. You can engage with this at any level. Our level 2 group opens up more perks and also gives you access to a monthly live stream. Now, in the monthly live stream, we spend an hour together and it's really a kind of sort of teaching input thing. And I try to be as responsive as possible to things that members are interested in. So members often request a topic and then we run with it and we cover that ground during the live stream. And because we've got longer, we've got time to go into much more detail than we have, say, in the video you've just seen. So it's a chance to go further, to go deeper, to learn more. And there's also a live chat running. So it means that people can ask questions, we can interact with each other, share news, and that becomes a very supportive community. And by the way, if you can't join us live for these live streams, they're all recorded and you have access to them at any point that suits you. If you want to go a step further, level 3 gives you access to discounts on courses, but opens up another live stream each month. And this time you can make submissions to it. So if you want to submit one of your compositions or arrangements or a harmony exercise or a recorded performance of you playing whatever, you're very welcome to do so there. And we share that in the group and I give you one-to-one feedback on the work that you submit. And again, it's something that people tell us is incredibly helpful. And again, just sharing that helps people to realize that other people are having the same kind of joys and successes as they are, but also maybe some of the same struggles and setbacks, and we can just kind of discuss that and go a little bit further in nailing kind of technique that would help to resolve those kind of issues. Very friendly people and all seemingly enjoying being part of this group and connecting with others around the world. So if that's for you, come and join us at Maestros. Back on the homepage of the website, you'll also find a link to courses. That gives you access to all of the courses we offer, lots of courses, all designed to empower the all-round musician. And whereas the videos on YouTube are kind of one-offs, the courses are kind of A to Z journeys. So you can kind of get hold of your theory, start right at the beginning and go right up to an advanced level, or your oral training or analysis skills or harmony or whatever it is that you're wanting to study. Anyway, have a look at www.mmcourses.co.uk and see what's for you.